Yeah.
Hello, good morning, everyone. As we start to come on in, it is Banner and Backbone with the Anti Fascist Book Club. I am Nick Perro. I'm joined by my friends and colleagues here at Banner and Backbone, Melissa Corrigan and Shane Urich. And we are joined today by a special guest and colleague and friend at this point who has been putting in more work than most, and resident Nazi hunter, host of the Find Out podcast, Veterans Fighting Fascism, Task Force Butler, a laundry list of amazing things. Chris Goldsmith, welcome.
Thank you, Nick. It's great to be here.
Glad you're joining us. And do you mind introducing yourself a little bit to everyone while I begin pulling up the today's book, and we'll begin going over and talking about things.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Chris Goldsmith. As Nick said, founder of Task Force Butler Institute and Veterans Fighting Fascism. Task Force Butler Institute is a 501c3 nonprofit that trains veterans in open source intelligence research so that we can hold domestic extremists accountable in a court of law. Veterans Fighting Fascism, dual branded, looks very similar, is a bit different. It's more about public education. And the big project of Veterans Fighting Fascism is what we're here to talk about today, the Anti-Fascist Book Club. The goal is not simply to learn about the history of fascism, because the history of fascism is a history of fascism failing and democracy winning. Might take some time, but democracy wins. But also a way to build community, both online and in the real world, because the way that you need to combat fascism is where it's growing in your own backyard, because that's where you can make a difference no matter where in the United States you are.
Thank you. Well, and this one is a really timely one too, um, especially this first book that's on the list. So, for those of you who were not here last week, this is our second episode of the book club. Um, Last week we did a short one. Melissa and I introduced what it was, what we're doing here, what it's not. But the big thing that it is that we're building community and teaching everybody else here that you all can start your own anti-fascist book clubs too. And now may be the best fucking time to start doing it. Like if you haven't already, now would be the time. And I'm looking so far at a couple of the chats. We've got over 100 people on just 3 of the chats. I'm still aggregating everybody together on my screen so I can see and try and stay up if people have questions. But before I do any more of that, Melissa, Shane, do you guys have any questions or comments before we get going? And while I start pulling up the screen for our first book, which is What is Fascism?
No, I'm very excited to be here. I feel like I look like a bag of drowned rats. I got in from DC at like 11 last night. Wonderful to be in DC. Absolutely, the energy, while grim in some ways, was pretty electric in other ways. So,
Yeah. I'm excited to be here. I'm unique. I'm having a week where I'm able to kind of hop in on some more of these shows because, you guys on Banner and Backbone know that I'm kind of a rarity these days. I'm trying to find a way to get my way on there. but I'm excited to be part of this. I think that this idea of an anti-fascist book club, or in general, it makes us all Antifa, right? So, and you form your own Antifa club in your community, because that's what it's all about. And the best way to do that is by starting a dialogue. Like those of you guys who know where I come from, know my background, is that's what the Firebrand Project's all about. It's about a dialogue. So fighting fascism starts with changing the national dialogue. And that's really, I think, something that we can demonstrate here by going through this this reading we've got today. And I'm stoked to be here and looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thanks. Well, let's get into it. So our first reading was What is Fascism? And Can It Happen Here? The title is a little rhetorical at this point.
This was posted 2 years ago. So there have been a lot of people who get mad at me for talking shit about fascists, and they're like, stop being mean to our president. And it's like, I wrote all of this well before he was in office and
before the fall,
and for a very long time. So if you are mistaking me as talking about Donald Trump, that's on you.
You're condemning yourself by stating that you're talking the president. You're calling him a fascist. I'm shitting on fascists.
Yeah, it doesn't say anything about Donald Trump here. No doesn't say his name once.
No. And so I was listening to it again this morning because I figured it's probably important to understand how it parallels, because this one specifically parallels exactly what's going on in terms of talking about the rise of fascism and how it consolidates power in the beginning. And that sort of Reichstadt fire moment, and just we're there. We had Charlie Kirk assassinated, and since that moment, it has been an all-out fascist assault on the First Amendment. Could you talk a little bit about your thoughts on how that parallels with what you wrote 2 years ago, and how you feel now with events?
Yeah, so we came up with the What is Fascism page here as kind of a collaborative effort with some historians on our team at Task Force Butler Institute. Fascism is a word that gets thrown around a ton, and sometimes it seems to be devalued because it's been used flippantly in the past. So that has given people the impression when they hear it today that those using it are using it flippantly, or using it almost like a slur to describe Donald Trump and what's going on. What we are hoping to do is help folks who did not study this part of political science or this part of history, which I never did until I went to college in my late 20s. We're hoping to help people understand how to recognize fascism. So there are other political terms like democracy and republic and authoritarianism and totalitarianism that have clear defined definitions. But fascism is unique in the way because it was originally a party. It was a party in Italy under Mussolini, and that party's ideals, which we categorize here, became so synonymous with a new form of government and a new form of social politics that the term fascism started to apply to other places like Nazi Germany. So this is meant to be an intro. It's meant to be the too long didn't read version of a history book on fascism that was written by historians, to give you an entry into the problem as it exists and an introduction to how we can fight it.
I have a question for you, Chris, kind of in regards to that. And you were talking about how fascism has been used flippantly, like the term, and how in and of itself, right, it means different things. But would you say the reason as well that people have kind of minimized its impact is because it's almost been directly associated with the Holocaust.
Mhm.
And this idea that the Holocaust will never happen again, which we obviously know is not true. But do you think that has a role in the minimization of the term as well?
Yeah, and I think I try to remember who I was during the Bush presidency, during the beginning of the global war when I deployed, or even before that. Think about like my favorite bands. I used to be into like punk and alternative, and I think about the lyrics of some of my favorite songs that were written way back then, and one, System of a Down. One of the easiest lyrics that like I remember in my head is "We all live in a fascist nation," and I think about what Serge Tankian must have been thinking of and his context of that moment. I think that song might have been written as early as like 2021 or 2023. I think that most people, historians, political science, and everyday Americans, would not recognize the America that we lived in back then, comparative to today, as a fascist nation. Though I can understand why some people would feel that way, particularly in the post 9/11 era, when entire communities were deemed as suspicious or as potentially traitorous or as potentially terrorists.
Yeah.
If that is the context of the world that you live in, like we've been under fascism for a long time. If you grew up in Jim Crow America, if you grew up with your ancestors having been formerly enslaved, like were we a fascist nation back then before fascism was identified as by political sciences by political scientists as a unique form of government? I don't know. But many of the same attributes that are written down here, which are kind of timeless, will, I think, help contextualize different people's experiences under even our American government.
Awesome.
So let's get into it a little bit too. So I think we've covered a pretty good prelude and sort of an intro, but also a coverage of what we will go over in all of here. So let's start with the first section, which is power and the fetishization of power, and the powerful image and the creation of powerful images. And just coming right off the top of my head, this reminds me of exactly what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, with Donald Trump being shot at. A round was fired in his rough direction, and
Yes.
a very powerful image was created out of that, with blood streaking in the wrong direction.
I know.
That's just my opinion. Those aren't facts, but if you look
it
at
is
pictures,
flags is printed on
and
what would otherwise be an American flag. So yeah.
It's a very powerful image, and they used it very powerfully. And they continue to, because they made simple slogans out of it: fight, fight, fight. He did all that stupid marketing and grifting on colognes and shit like that. Like, to me, that harkens out very, very closely to what you're talking about throughout all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
I think what I haven't looked at this in quite a while, and what deliberately jumps out is what has been put in bold, which again I did years ago, and it's striking to see those points highlighted. Ritualized showcases of military strength. Like, it feels like a long time ago. It was not a long time ago that Donald Trump threw himself a birthday parade in the style of Kim Jong-un.
Yes.
And not just that, like I just got back from DC, and it's number one, it's alarming and very jarring at first to see armed patrols in your nation's capital. And what I told my husband was, the part that was more alarming to me was how quickly I became conditioned to
Mm-hmm.
it. And after just about a day, it was kind of like, oh, there's another couple of them. Oh, they become part of the background. They become part of the scenery, and that's incredibly disturbing.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting too, because like you do get desensitized, but also like you and me and Chris and Nick, we have the luxury of being desensitized because we are
Right.
not a person that has to fear those guys. Because if you
Right.
are one of those groups of people that they're there to arrest for whatever reason, then you do fear them.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think that's a
In the
little bit,
spirit of this kind of fascism that they're trying to institute. Go ahead, Nick.
yeah. Yeah, I also think it's a little it's they the fascism they're instituting is true fear now. Like we do have to, as even as white folks, we found out again this week through Jimmy Kimmel that white doesn't mean right. Only a certain white means right. And we aren't that. We are not that certain white. Like I can guarantee you, my family went into the last gas chambers. They would probably welcome us back in the new ones. Um, and so I think we need to, like you said, Chris, fetishization of power. The bold points are always really important. And I'm glad you include bold like this. Something I like doing in like technical work and stuff when I was in software was using bold on a minimal scale for where it's just really hyper important, because then it draws the eye really quickly. We have our fetishization of power, our archetype of the cult of personality. And maybe we could talk on that a little bit and what we think the cult of personality is going to do now that Trump is on some of the last end of his years, and the groomed next king was just assassinated last week. Can you talk about what that might mean in terms of how that affects a cult of personality from your experience as someone who's done a lot of research into these groups?
Yeah. So this is a good thing for us to kind of game out right now, wondering who is going to inherit Charlie Kirk's power, because his wife, she's a woman. She's not going to. Fascists are driven towards a masculine figure. Now, Charlie Kirk, it's not nice to speak ill of the dead, but he wasn't necessarily that masculine, but he came with the aggression and the anger and the hatred that people associate with masculine personalities, if not in physical form. There is going to have to be another man who steps into that space. Now, his wife, for those who don't know, has been elected as CEO of Turning Point USA. I don't know if she's CEO of the entire conglomeration, the C3, C4, the LLCs, the PACs, and everything else, or if she's just a figurehead for raising nonprofit funds. I don't know that. But they will find another voice. We have seen Ben Shapiro, being put up on a pedestal by Ezra Klein at the New York Times. They had a discussion the other day about toning down the political rhetoric, which is, I just want to reiterate that Ezra Klein is a fucking moron, because he has no idea the damage that he's doing right now in platforming someone who is the gateway to neo-Nazism, as Ben Shapiro has been. So I don't know who is going to inherit it. We saw J.D. Vance do an audition. He hosted Charlie Kirk's show earlier this week from the White House, 2-hour episode, where they talked about retribution against the left, against Democrats, against they and them, because Republicans now love pronouns. We are seeing J.D. Vance try to inherit the microphone and the crown. And I know that a lot of people think that J.D. Vance doesn't have the personality that's going to draw in MAGA, but I think in the power vacuum that will exist when Donald Trump is no more, I think that J.D. Vance is is well positioned to inherit the fascist movement in the United States.
I think to your point, I think JD Vance is incredibly important, and I think that his role, he's a chameleon, right? He's always been a chameleon.
Mm-hmm.
And his job is to fill the gap, fill the void, and it's significant, right? Who did JD Vance took him back to the Capitol on Air Force Two? He had his hand on the coffin. He's making an emotional appeal to those young men that are the core foundation of that violent aspect of the MAGA base. And one of the things that me and Nick talk about is techno-fascism and his relationship to the money, and a lot of the inspiration that comes and is an important integral part of this movement that we're seeing to undermine our democracy. JD Vance is he's one of the opposable thumbs of Peter Thiel. It's him and Stephen Miller, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's got two hands as he shapes his vision of destroying our democracy. And JD Vance is, the chameleon. He's the guy who's there to inherit the throne. He was like raised in the image of that's his job, right? Like you said, his job is to, be charismatic and sound intelligent. And he's always taken kind of a back seat throughout the presidency. He's been on a lot of vacations. He's tried to avoid the more contentious decisions. And I think that's intentional. What do you think, Melissa?
Yeah, I agree. The chameleon thing is just perfect. I feel like he is wherever his puppet master needs him to be at any given point in time. And not just the presence. That man has quite a face on him in terms of when Trump will get on a tear, suddenly JD is sort of over his shoulder looking very concerned. And I think they are priming this positioning of JD as a more sane, level-headed, not dementia-riddled individual who
Absolutely.
may not have that cult of personality, but I think what they're going to push is JD has this steadiness. He never was on board with Trump's more extreme beliefs and actions and the words that he would say, because I've noticed that months ago JD was always there grinning, like right there over his shoulder, just cheesing, grinning. And recently there's been a lot more concern looks and actual physical distancing of himself from the president. So I think that they're going to use his lack of personality that would contribute to a cult of personality to sell a more reasoned and sensible type of individual.
Yeah. I think that a lot of folks don't recognize this cult of personality thing, and we'll talk more about this as an integral part of what it means to be an authoritarian. To be an authoritarianism, to be an authoritarian, you have to have an authoritarian personality. Someone like JD Vance, who is a talented chameleon, could embrace the authoritarian personality. He seems to be morally flexible enough to do that. He seems to be a good enough actor to do that. He is someone who is in every way an elitist in the same way that I am. He wrote a book about being raised in Appalachia, which he kind of wasn't. At least people from Appalachia say he's not. But he's an Ivy League educated veteran, the same way that I am. Difference is he went to law school too. And that guy, I think can step into the shoes of Donald Trump in ways that people don't anticipate. Like Donald Trump has convinced the everyman that he is one of them, even though he's a fucking billionaire who inherited hundreds of millions of dollars and squandered multiple businesses, right? He was a fraud. He was a con man. JD Vance has all of the personality traits that would enable him to just simply walk right into that personality. Again, the chameleon thing, that is not something that came from the press. It's not something that came from pundits. it's a description that came from J.D. Vance's friends, people who went to school with him, people who served in the military with him, and have seen over time his personality completely change depending on having new motives, new objectives, and new goals.
Could you talk maybe a little bit about how that ties into maybe one of this idea of, say, a carefully curated propaganda campaign, and how Stephen Miller, those two are tied together, or how they are fighting possibly for, or vying for, the role as king. Can you talk a little bit about how that maybe is fracturing a curated media structure, because they're not always on message together anymore, not like they used to be?
Yeah, I don't know that Stephen Miller is necessarily a player in this, because he does not have any of the skill set that JD Vance does. While he may be a frankly evil, racist piece of shit, and I never use the word evil to describe people. I don't believe in heaven or hell, right? Like, it's a unique. He's a unique person. He does not have the personality that would allow him to be the front man. He is very effective in messaging to a Fox News audience. But because of the way he looks, the sound of his voice, the way that he moves his head when he talks, he's not a person who the average American looks at, listens to, and goes, I want to be like that guy. So I don't see Stephen Miller ever getting more powerful than his current position. And I think that if J.D. Vance inherits the throne, that Stephen Miller will just have to fall in line behind him.
I actually think I think Stephen Miller, to be honest, I think he's the most powerful person in the White House right now. Because if you look at his job, the job of the chief deputy of policy is to sculpt policy for the president. And we've seen Trump literally be like, what am I signing? Right. So you know how I said, they're the opposable thumbs, right? JD Vance is the face, and Stephen Miller is the actual hands that pen the executive orders. So just a fun, if you really want to insult Stephen Miller, because I want to insult him a little bit, look at a picture of Megamind and then look at Stephen Miller.
That's an insult to Megamind. Don't do that. Don't ruin a good movie. Don't ruin the best movie ever, aside from Shawshank Redemption, with Stephen Miller's image.
Sorry. I just was thinking it's just the forehead for me. It's like his whole head just seems to expand upwards. But I do agree that he's not personable at all, and like he's only good at messaging to that Fox audience. But I actually think that, like, if you look at, like, I think JD Vance steps into the strongman position, and Stephen Miller continues to craft policy, and he does exactly what Trump. JD just does what Trump is doing, but he does it better. I mean, if you look, he's basically, I think they want him to step into the wartime president role, which gives him a easy strongman image, right? You see the provocations with Venezuela. And you see all this warmongering going on. I think that's probably the situation. And they can create a cult of personality around JD Vance as a strong wartime president.
Yeah, I agree. Like everything you just said, I agree with you.
Shane, that's not always a good thing when Chris agrees with you. He's not always the good news fairy. So
I'm the opposite. I was doing a show yesterday where people were asking me like, what's coming next? We've reached the end of my war games. We've reached the end of my scenario planning. Like, beyond here, it only fucking gets like way worse.
I know. I know. So, I walked my dogs this morning. I'm like, this is so nice. I don't have to look at the news yet, because I'm going to look at the news and I'm going to be like, fuck.
Yeah, sometimes it's good just to walk away for a little bit. Melissa, can you talk about, if you want to on here, the new idea you had for the A1C
Yes, I'm going to be starting a new initiative. Part of my concern, I myself have been outright banned, shadow banned, or blocked from every other platform. I can't get an account on Facebook. Meta just got kicked off my local next door last week, and then Twitter about 4 days ago.
Hmm.
So, looking at how we can establish platforms, we're clearly going to have to go offshore. So I've done some research, and we're going to be establishing a virtual private server offshore, and it's in a nation that doesn't share information or extradite. So that's the first step, is establishing the platform. So I've named this the 1A Collective for First Amendment, obviously. And we're going to host content that is factual information for Americans to be able to see that. And the creators are whoever writes or creates content on that site is going to have a safe place that not only they can broadcast their message, but that they can store. One of my biggest things that I'm looking for is hefty storage options.
Mhm.
So I can take my content that I have on Substack and just store it there in case Substack begins doing what the other platforms are doing. So this is a brand new initiative. I announced it this morning. And so I'm looking forward to building it out with all of the talented people on Substack. It is a collective. I do in no way have the capacity to manage a project like this completely alone. It will be a collective. When I was in DC, what struck me is the quiet resistance everywhere. Everywhere you looked, there were stickers, there were beside the cash register in small businesses, they are now selling On Tyranny next to the cash register. They're selling small bound copies of the Constitution. And then there's efforts like this happening on the ground. I got handed this flyer, and I was so inspired that the people of DC are not being violent, they're not being loud, but they by no means are taking this lying down. They are establishing community networks that are off the main grid. You don't see any of this on social media. You're not seeing these movements on social media. You're seeing them in person on those community boards when you go into coffee shops and bookstores around DC. If you're looking, it's everywhere. And so I want to have a platform that is a virtual space, because not everybody can go to DC, that is a virtual space for safe storage and dissemination of content, and a place where Americans can go and see factual information. Another thing that I'm really passionate about on this site is we are going to be fact checking like crazy. So everything that gets published on this site will be fact checked.
That's awesome. My hats off to you. I know how difficult it is to try to build and manage things overseas. Our research for Task Force Butler is like obviously very at risk. Though, frankly, if the government were to take our files and turn them into public record, like if we ever got sued, sure, okay, here's all these Nazis.
Right.
I don't care. Like I don't have any data that I want to hide. I'm just doing it, because I don't believe in extrajudicial punishment. I believe in justice, right?
Right.
But we have this entire like OSINT industry, as small as it is, have all been looking to overseas solutions, because we do see the great likelihood that this regime will start to crack down to force companies that like Substack, which is my second primary platform, to just make concessions.
Right.
CBS, ABC, Disney, Harvard, Columbia, Yale, all of these mega corporate law firms, like they're all just conceding at this point. So Hamish McKenzie, who founded or was one of the founders of Substack, he thinks that he's built something that can't be taken from writers, and I hope he's right, but I don't see any evidence that he's got what it takes to
Right.
to prevent the Trump administration from forcing his hand on anything. My primary platform, where I've built my largest audience, is TikTok. And Democrats in office joined with Republicans to force the sale of TikTok over supposed national security concerns. They have forced TikTok to sell to people like Mark Andreessen, who is a Trump ally, who also, by the way, has a very big stake in Substack. Who is, he's had text messages released that make it look like he is saying my people, as in white people, are pissed off about DEI, right? So if all of these platforms are controlled by a small number of oligarchs who are lining themselves up with Donald Trump, going overseas for digital services is really the only thing that we can do.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm all
And
for
another
don't entertain
important
idiots.
another
Sorry,
important facet of the 1A collective, because I put a post up a couple days ago. People like us are exhausted. We're exhausted. And I said, if even 5% of my followers were to begin themselves writing content, we would have a massive upswelling, and it becomes harder and harder to silence a growing group of individuals. So we're going to also be empowering people who have never written before or created content to go ahead and start doing that. Not only because if I get taken down, there needs to be someone to step up into my space, but additionally, we need to share this load. Instead of one of us writing 5 hefty, very research driven pieces, 5 people can each write one of those pieces. And we've got to be sharing this load. We've got to be empowering Americans who have never engaged in this type of activity, to empower them to step up and exercise their First Amendment rights. And by taking it offshore, I'm hoping to provide them a little bit of protection. And I did say, look, if you're going to step up and speak out, you have to understand that's an inherent risk, but we're going to try to mitigate that risk. If you want to write under a pen name on this offshore account, perhaps we can mitigate some of that risk. But in this tech-driven world, we all have to understand that there's a risk involved.
So with that, knowing risk comes control, and we're at part of the control state. We're starting to see extraordinary levels of violence to quash opposition, starting with their own first. I think we can reasonably say that from the evidence that has been put out thus far, the assumption is that the individual who shot Charlie Kirk was a Groyper or associated with the Groyper movement, was black pilled, as they say, a nihilist, primed for extraordinary levels of violence to quash the opposition, which in this case was a slightly dissenting voice from the right to possibly consolidate more power. We didn't really talk about who fills the vacuum too much, other than J.D. Vance, and that control, and who has power to incite extraordinary levels of violence. Can you talk about some of the other players like Nick Fuentes, or even what happened last week with Brian Kilmeade advocating for murdering homeless people, and then 2 homeless encampments were shot up with mass shootings, plus another homeless man was hung in Mississippi, and a black student was hung in Mississippi. I'm calling those lynchings because I don't know what else to call a black person hanging themselves from a tree with bruises and broken bones, and I don't know any black person historically who ever just hangs themselves publicly like that.
I just want to add a quick note to that, Nick. And one of the things is, any racially motivated crime we should call a lynching. It doesn't matter. It doesn't just have to be someone hanging from a tree. A lot of these movements, because one of the things I'm writing right now in honor of Trey is I'm doing a deep dive into racial violence in the South, Mississippi. But one of the things these groups advocate for is the shifting of the term lynching from specifically that instance to all racially motivated violence. And we all know how important language is in this environment. So I wanted to add that to your comment.
Yeah. So
yeah, and open for whoever. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
So in the next section that's on screen right now, talking about one of the 4 core elements that we identify as the pillars of fascism, we have control. Again, wrote this years ago with my team. We did not write this in the context of the current regime in power. We have seen in independent media, including comedians, threatened, harassed, and pushed out of their work. After Charlie Kirk was murdered, while we have figures like Nick Fuentes and Laura Loomer, who are very closely aligned with Donald Trump, even if they don't get along all the time, those people were calling Charlie Kirk a fascist for a few months now, and they'd been very aggressive in their campaign to try to harass Charlie Kirk, to push him further and further and further right. Now, Charlie Kirk didn't always advocate in favor of promoting the Great Replacement conspiracy theory, this anti-Jewish and racist conspiracy theory that posits that there's a secret Jewish cabal that is replacing white voters and white people throughout the Western world with brown or black people as a way of diluting white votes. That is what the Great Replacement conspiracy theory is. Charlie Kirk used to explicitly say that that was not a conspiracy theory that should be entertained. But after harassment, infiltration, and pressure coming from Nick Fuentes and his followers, these explicit, self-described white nationalists, fascists, and neo-Nazis, Charlie Kirk started to embrace that dangerous conspiracy theory, the same conspiracy theory that has led to mass shootings in Walmarts and malls and synagogues and churches, right? So when people came out and simply told the truth about Charlie Kirk in the days after his death, we saw a purge. MSNBC, Washington Post, a bunch of other outlets started letting columnists and journalists and political commentators go for saying truthful things about the man who died. They are sometimes doing it on their own. They're sometimes self-censoring because of this climate of fear and control that causes people to self-censor and protect themselves under fear that the fascist regime will come after them. But others, like these media conglomerates and ABC affiliates, are working to use their corporation to pressure ABC and Disney from below. And the FCC, part of the federal government, is threatening ABC, or was threatening ABC, saying that they have to fire Jimmy Kimmel, or else they might lose their license to broadcast, which would absolutely destroy the company. The entire thing would be destroyed. And they folded. That is a clear First Amendment violation. The First Amendment is the thing that's not, like, the core thing about it, as anyone who's read a history book can tell you, is that it is to prevent compelled speech, or to prevent the government from coming and telling you what you can't say. And that is precisely what we've just seen happen. And I am not surprised to see a relative like meh after Jimmy Kimmel has been fired under those conditions, because we have been, as Melissa said before, so conditioned to the creeping authoritarianism that people aren't really reacting with the sense of urgency that I think they should be.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we all agree on this call. That's why we're here.
I will say that the DC was very eye-opening, and there's a reason I keep going. I'm lucky that I live just a few hours away and I can go. And under this regime, I have made it a point to drive up as often as I can, because there's so much out there. Unfortunately, there are people on the left that are just as guilty of sensationalizing. You know, they'll get 14 different angles of a video of an ICE raid, and they'll, you know, sort of insinuate that that's 14 different raids. And so at this point, I am highly skeptical of most media at all. So I want to be able to go put myself there. And so I continue to drive up and put myself on the streets. The last time I was there was the end of June. And from then until now, I cannot tell you how much the deployment of the National Guard has changed the very feeling of DC. I did go live a couple days ago from the National Mall. I've never in my life have gone to DC all the time, and I've never in my life seen it that quiet. And they've removed all of the vendors that surround the National Mall that sell t-shirts, souvenirs, and food. You can't find a food cart or a water. Is somebody selling water? Not so much as a hot dog cart. And this may seem, that's not too big a deal. Number one, I want to know where those people went. I want to know where those people went, number one. And number two, when you remove food and water from a central gathering place in the heart of your nation's capital, the place where people are told the National Mall exists for you to come file your grievances with your government. You can come protest, you can stand, you can march. It's right there in the heart of the government on the Capitol building's front lawn. And so to see it completely desolate, empty, and quiet, you could close your eyes and think you were out in the country somewhere. It was starkly alarming to me, starkly. So underneath that, as I drove around, I made sure to drive around at night. I drove around the U District at night. I drove around just about every neighborhood in DC at day and night because I wanted to see for myself. And what I see is a people who are pissed. They are pissed, and they are organizing, and they are doing it what I believe is the correct way. They're doing it quietly. They are not being open. You don't got people out here throwing Molotov cocktails anywhere. They are organizing quietly, effectively, and there is a groundswell of movement there. Aside from what the people of DC are doing, something that I found remarkable in this writing, you talk about the anti-intellectualism that emerges as a locus of control, which leads to the rise of propaganda. Something that I noticed that was absolutely incredible were the exhibits that the Smithsonian has put up. They are so fresh, they smell like paint and construction. And I'm telling you, I've gone to these Smithsonians, I've taken my kids, I went when I was little, I've taken my kids. Some of those exhibits haven't changed since I was a kid in the 80s and 90s. So there are fresh exhibits, and they are exhibits with a fucking point. They are making a statement. They are pulling out civil rights exhibits. They are pulling out exhibits that show the importance of free and fair elections. They are pulling out exhibits to demonstrate how nonviolent protest works. I mean, I got chills walking in some of these buildings and seeing brand new exhibits that was a big this to the guy in the White House. That you talk about museum curators and librarians are kicking ass right now and letting the American people know this is your history. This is what being American is. And that's not what's going on right now. So I was heartened that there is this propaganda campaign and this anti-intellectual campaign. But what also struck me about these Smithsonian exhibits is that they were very simple to understand. These were not high-level academia. This was a very easy to understand, plain language message. And I absolutely love that, because that is exactly what we need in a nation where the average reading level has gone down to 5th grade at this point. They met them on that 5th grade level with an undeniable message that what's happening right now is un-American, and here's the history of America, and here's what we need to do to fix that.
So I'm smiling because I'm thinking about some of the merch that Veterans Fighting Fascism has submitted to our artists or our artisans to start printing shirts, and included in them is "Defend Your Local Library," and
Yes.
another one is "Knowledge as a Weapon," because librarians have been key to maintaining history, to helping cultures, countries, and people maintain a connection to truth in the face of an authoritarian takeover. So I think that a lot of people stop having experiences at libraries after grade school. That is, I think, just part of who we are as Americans. I want to encourage folks who like the idea of creating an anti-fascist book club to consider using your local library as the physical venue for meeting. First of all,
Yes.
local libraries are local. They are, there are many of them. It becomes extremely difficult to surveil these types of things, right? You might and you might have a place that you can rent or that you can just simply reserve for free for even large groups to meet.
Right.
And these librarians, their goal is to educate you. They are teachers for people who are interested in lifelong learning, and they are a public good for as long as they last. And you should utilize them when you get the chance.
I think, too, one of the things that you can do, and in the spirit of libraries, but also something I've made a change in my life, I don't watch streaming services anymore. I read books. I like, and I'm just as guilty as everybody else. Like, we just binge watch shit and we like totally just brain rot. And it's a conscious decision you have to make to say, you know what, I'm gonna change how I spend my time. And I've noticed just in the amount of time that I've started reading, which has been about a month and a half now, I've gone through like 5 books, which is like I haven't read 5 books in years. And you know, I feel smarter. I feel like my pattern recognition has gotten better, which is something that is extremely important right now, is developing your advanced pattern recognition, because when you're looking at a authoritarian or an autocratic country or form of government, the best way to undermine that is to use your advanced pattern recognition to call out the discrepancies, because it's all about lies. That's literally all lies. They just lie about everything. So if you're able to recognize and say, well, I know based on X, Y, and Z, like a good example is the Treasury came out the other day. They said, oh, consumer spending is up 5%, right? So they're pointing to this number. They're like, this is great. Well, if you adjust for inflation, that number goes down to just about like 2%, around 2%, right? But if you don't use your context, your contextual clues, your advanced pattern recognition to say, well, they're saying one thing, I know they lie, let me go look at other data to get closer to the truth. And the only way you can do that is by developing your advanced pattern recognition and even reading. I read fantasy books, okay? Like I'm reading about all kinds of cool shit. You got dragons and wyverns and queens and kings, and I love it. But also it's about a dictator who's an evil king, right? Who's taking over, and you know, he's genociding all the magic users and whatever. You still see advanced pattern tyranny in these books, and tyranny is the same everywhere. It's always the same. It doesn't matter. Tyranny is tyranny. It doesn't matter if there's elves and, you know, dragons, or if there's, you know, Nazis, and it's always the same.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I think that fiction is essential, and it's something that we do plan to incorporate into our anti-fascist book club reading list. You know, one of the reasons that I haven't put them on yet is because I want to make sure that I do this carefully. I remember the night that I read 1984 from cover to cover. It was in August of 2007, and it was just after I left the military. At the time, I was a libertarian who was really into Ron Paul, and with that came like a lot of conspiracy theories. That's when YouTube started to become like really popular, and I was spending a lot of time watching crazy shit on YouTube and being like, oh, I don't know what to believe. So reading 1984 when I was in that headspace was probably not optimal. So I want to be careful when I list a fiction section within the Anti-Fascist Book Club, because it can be fulfilling, or it can be crushing. Because when you start, 1984 in the context of today, if I were still in the same headspace and I read that book for the first time today, I feel like I'd be extremely disturbed. And I don't want to do that. I want to make sure that I'm empowering people. With that said, I don't read a lot of fiction, so I will be asking people for advice on what should be included.
Shane, we got a question.
Oh, shoot. Yeah, for sure.
We got a question actually for you. Was which book were you talking about?
Oh, so the series is called Throne of Glass. It's by Sarah
J.
Maas. Yes,
or Maas,
and
yeah.
it's Maas. It's rocking, dude. It's rocking, and it's all about empowering women. It's about a princess. My fiance turned me onto it, and she's a princess who was abandoned, and she's reclaiming her throne, and she's coming into her own, and gaining confidence and strength. And if you have a daughter, get them the frickin' book, because it's all about powerful women, and we need more of that. A large part of our cultural shift is, and I'm going to shift a little bit just to kind of point this out, but I promise I won't go too far, is in a country where you have a meritocracy that primarily benefited men, and then you empower women. Women are better at this shit than men, because men haven't had to try. And they created a meritocracy, but then women start to outperform men, and men react. It's all about the pendulum. What we're seeing is the reaction, this growth in misogyny. This suddenly you have women who can have a career and they don't need no man. And then all these incels are like, why don't women want to be with me? Because you're a fucking incel, bro. Like, that's why. But so it's all about exposing. Even if you have a son, expose men to strong women, and that can be done in fiction.
It doesn't have to be fiction, because you can get books like Bad Girls throughout history that I just picked up in DC, and this is actually a second copy. They have an original that my daughter already has, so that everyone in your household will have access to history of badass women.
So
yeah, I think a kid's book list too is also something that I should consider putting up there.
Well,
yes,
you got a kid to read to now. And so I want to get to, because we've only got a couple more minutes, and I think this is a really good segue point for this first episode. Maybe we even have to come back and keep talking about this one for another episode too. We're going to be doing this, by the way, everyone, every Friday, 12:30 Eastern, until we give it up, which will be a very long time from now. And Chris, you're always welcome back whenever you have time or want to, and come discuss with us. Your knowledge and presence is really appreciated, and we'd love to continue to bring on additional guests as well throughout. And everybody in the discussions, thank you for participating. There are a ton of people here with us today. So I want to ask on this last one, this big last piece of bold, which is a positive idea, is an independent media presents a clear threat to a fascist leader. Can we talk about how we can continue to bolster and build an independent media with what we're all doing? Sell yourself a little bit in this as well as part of it. But also, like, what can people be doing to support independent media right now?
So if you are not a subscriber to Banner and Backbone yet, I want to encourage you to do that. Go to Substack, look for Banner and Backbone, look for everyone who's on screen right now, and subscribe. You don't have to pay for everything if you're not able to or you're not ready to support us. That's fine. But if you subscribe, we will be able to contact you. You will be able to get our work. Now, if Substack ever gets sabotaged, the one thing that is really valuable and unique about Substack is it is a social media platform that also allows creators to go direct to those folks who want to consume their content. So if I get kicked off of Substack, I can take the list of contacts that I have who subscribed, and I can put them into Beehive or another email distribution platform. So that is the most essential thing, is just simply connect. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, not just follow. I have been on a journey of creating new media this year. It has kind of been my 2025 journey. I have a podcast with a bunch of other dudes called that used to be part of White Dudes for Harris. It's called the Find Out Podcast. My co-host Tim has been on your show before, and we are so glad to work with all of you. To see you growing, to see your organization grow, and for those who can financially support us, a Substack subscription of $6 for Find Out. I don't know what the price is for yours, but $8 for mine. Like, those are the things that allow us to do this work. This is now my full-time job. Content creation is the way that I have chosen to stake out a living, and it is nerve-wracking, but it is worth it. I've run these nonprofits. Veterans Fighting Fascism and the Anti-Fascist Book Club is not something that pays me. It is just simply public education that I feel compelled to do as a patriotic American. But I need to eat. I just had a kid, and I need to make sure that I am dedicating my time in a way that I get compensated for. It coming from the nonprofit world, even with all the struggles, the years of not paying myself, it's still difficult for me to ask people to pay. But we are in a place where we are watching traditional media fail and bow and bend the knee to Donald Trump and his authoritarian takeover. We are not going to do that. So if you are still watching us now, I want to encourage you to subscribe, support us. Make sure you check out the Find Out podcast, my Substack, On Offense with Chris Goldsmith, and you must subscribe to this show right here, Banner and Backbone.
Chris, thank you. Thank you so much. Shane, Melissa, any last thoughts before we close out for the day?
Yeah, I mean, I'm currently, one of my goals, right, is like Chris said, like, it's hard to do this full time. Well, I'm trying really hard to be able to commit more to this. And one of the ways I can do that is through those paid subscriptions, so I can step down to a part-time role. So I am currently running a subscription offer of 50% off for lifetime, annual, and monthly. If you do decide to subscribe, the best way to support is monthly, because it guarantees a more consistent income. But what I will say is that is what I like. I'd love to be part of Anti-Fascist Book Club every week, but my job won't let me. Like, I am able to do this week, and I'm having so much fun. And I think it's been exceptionally valuable. But at the same time, like, as creators here, we need your help to continue doing what we're doing. Otherwise, we can't do it. And that's what the Firebrand Project is all about. It's not about me. It's never been about me. It's about you guys. And it's about creating a launch pad for dialogue that needs to be had. So if you are able to support the Firebrand Project right now, I am running that. And if you can help me get closer to my goal, maybe I can be part of Anti-Fascist Book Club every week. So if you liked seeing me over here being, making jokes about Megamind, an upsetting pick, consider going over to the Firebrand Project. But I'll toss the potato over to you, Melissa.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just gonna mirror everything you just said. I'm also Counterstory Media exists to audit the narrative. We tell personal narratives to address harmful existing societal narratives that are false. So obviously that is very time intensive work. And on top of that, I've been taking on the in-person anti-fascist book clubs and other community organizing in person. So I'm also taking this work offline. So I'm just going to mimic exactly what he said. The more paid subscribers I have, the more of my time I can dedicate to this work, both online and offline.
And finally, thanks everyone. Come also support me at Sick of This Shit with Nick. I won't repeat everything, but I appreciate it too. And we will see everyone back again next week at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time for episode 3. We're going to continue on discussing what is fascism, mostly because I haven't gotten my On Tyranny yet from the bookstore. It's still in the mail, and I don't want to have to crunch through trying to read it. And we didn't get all the way through. So again, Chris, thanks for all of your time today. We really appreciate it. I appreciate you coming on and helping us and being a part of this with us. It's more important now than ever. Go support your teams, go support your communities, and go start your own anti-fascist book club. Use what we gave you today to help start your own. And we'll talk to you all again and see you next week. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. See you next time.
Burn bright, everybody.